Thank you, Forrest, for that wonderfully centering music to start us off today. My name is Janine Grossmeyer. I'm a member here at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Bowling Green. I want to welcome everyone, especially our visitors, to this gathering hosted by the Unitarian Universalist Church of Bowling Green. I would ask, before I forget, if you have one of these gadgets or another thing that beeps, please set it to silent. We are a welcoming congregation here at UUCBG. Whoever you are, however you identify, wherever you come from, and whoever you love, please know that you are welcome here. Our Sunday services are a little different each week so that we can honor and learn from a wide array of traditions and beliefs. We come from many different places. And today we're delighted to have one of our own. Charles Barman will be speaking to us. And though we each walk our own path here on this place, on this land of the Osage, the Cherokee, and the Shawnee, we will be journeying together as one community. Part of our community traditions is the flaming chalice. For Unitarian Universalists, it's a symbol of the light of learning and the love of our community. This morning, our chalice will be lit by Charles Barman. And as it's lit, if you have a chalice at home, please light that. And you can join in humming hymn number 362, Rise Up, O Flame. Thank you. Our opening words this morning will be shared by Natalie Barman.
Science can only be created by those who are thoroughly imbued with the aspiration towards truth and understanding. This source of feeling, however, springs from religion. To this, there also belongs the faith in the possibility that the regulations valid for the world of existence are rational, that is, comprehensible to reason. I cannot imagine a scientist without that profound faith. This situation may be expressed by an image. Science without religion is lame. Religion without science is blind.
We will be having a hymn, although I hear we're humming, so the words are up there on the board, and we will be doing No Number Tallies Nature Up. The lyrics are extracted from a poem by Ralph Waldo Emerson. Hymn number 79. Thank you, Forrest. I think I got a little lost as to where we were in that song. One more picture. There's a galaxy. And and the rose with the dews on it. So at this time, I'm going to share a little bit of a story, a sharing moment. We often have a sharing moment at this time. It's especially designed to be appealing to those of all ages. We have some younger folk than some of us, but still not the little tykes. But we're going to share the story. So around the year, you probably have seen these calendars. We usually use square grids to represent the march of days. And yet, January comes right after December, but on this grid, they're very separated. And so some people have said, hey, let's make it a wheel and put all the calendars together. That way December and January are right next to each other. And some people said, that's hard to read, not to mention I get dizzy. And so they just kind of do it with symbols of the month, especially popular in grade schools and things like that. And some of the symbols that we have for the holidays. Well, in our church here, we do have our own cycle of the year, our own things that we repeat season after season. We do guest at your table from November through January. Traditionally, we have a chili cook-off in March. And we have some other traditions that we do sort of as part of a Sunday service. And those, the Sunday services team has deemed our UU festivals, congregations festivals. Some of them we share with other groups around the world, and some of them are unique to our group. In the end of April, early May, we have Earth Day, which sometimes gets combined with Easter, spring festivals, a maypole. We often have a maypole up so people can dance around it. Dance is a relative term. We move around it in a circle. So, come June, usually the first real close to the beginning of summer, we do our flower celebration, which is a tradition started by a Unitarian minister almost 100 years ago. And then in August to September, we do the water ritual, our ingathering. People bring water from many places and share it. Come November, right around end of October, early November, we have Remembrance Day, where we remember those who've passed on. And then December, right at the beginning of winter, the shortest day of the year, we celebrate illumination, often by lighting all of our chalices or having a winter solstice spiral that we walk. So those are our 5 festivals that we celebrate throughout the year. And if we put them on a calendar like that, you can see they make a wheel of the year. You may also notice there's kind of a big gap right there. And so the Sunday services have been thinking about that as sort of a really long time between our festivals and said, hey, February, that's got nothing going on, except it does. Yep. We're going to call it, today is our newest festival. And so today, thank you for inaugurating our festival here. We're going to call it Science Sunday. Now, this was not just out of the blue that we just said, hey, let's do that, because this fellow, you may have heard of, Charles Darwin, was born on February 12th, which was yesterday. And this weekend, all around the world, actually, is called Evolution Weekend. Was started a project, 15, 20 years ago now, of churches saying that we believe in science. We think it's important, and so we're going to talk about science. So we are one of more than 100 congregations that signed up and said, we're going to have a science-centered Sunday at church on this weekend in February. Of course, that's Charles Darwin. He came up with the theory of evolution that says we are all connected. So here is our Science Sunday 2022. So thank you. We have a scientist here. We heard from a scientist, and we'll hear from some more scientists. So that was sort of a little explanation of why this Sunday is special to us and important to us. It's one of our sources where we get what we draw our inspiration from here as a congregation. And I'm going to share a very short story about a scientist, another one. It's called The Power of the Pencil. You may have noticed we have pencils on our chalice table. Not usually there, but it's a special Sunday, so here we go. I'm going to talk about this fellow named Joseph Priestley. He was born in England way back in 1733. Now, Joseph Priestley, like many children, was curious about everything. What's that? how's it work? And of course, the most difficult question of all, why? Why is the sky blue? Why is rainbows not blue? Why does the flame of a candle change color? Why? And his grandparents, he lived with his grandparents, if you've ever taken care of a young person, they got a little tired of that. And not only because he kept asking, but because they couldn't answer, because nobody could answer, because back in 1740 or something, nobody knew the answer to a lot of the questions that Joseph Priestley was curious about. So Joseph Priestley decided at a very young age that he was going to figure it out, and he became a scientist. But not only was he interested in stuff, physical things, he was interested in philosophy and theology. Where is God? Why is God? Why? Those questions got him, he went to church and he kept asking his questions, and they somehow didn't always want to he didn't like their answers, and they got a little annoyed with Joseph. And so he changed churches. That didn't work, so he changed to another church, and he kept asking these questions. He became a minister. But the people who were coming to his church wanted answers. They didn't want him to keep asking these questions. So they said, you should find another church. So he did. He found another church. And he finally ended up as a Unitarian minister, one of the very first in England. Well, Joseph he was trying to answer all these questions, and he became a scientist, an inventor, a minister, a philosopher, a theologian. He wrote history. He wrote a book of grammar because the existing book of grammar bothered him because it was wrong. So he did all of this stuff. An amazing guy with a lot of information to share. These are some of the things he invented or discovered. Carbonated water, if you've ever liked seltzer water or soda pop, this is the guy to say thank you. He discovered oxygen, which he just called dephlogisticated air. Don't ask. And he did a lot of study of electricity. And in doing all of this work, he became good friends with Benjamin Franklin, who happened to be in England during a lot of this time, and they were good friends. And one of the things he invented or discovered was this funny, squishy stuff that was really good for erasing marks on paper, rubbing it out, and he called it rubber, and it turned into an eraser. Nowadays, we fasten them to the end of the pencil, which is an amazing tool. On this end, I can write stuff down. And then if it's wrong, or I change my mind, I don't like it, I can erase it with the other end. And so you can always start over with the magic of a pencil. Pretty cool. And that's kind of what Joseph Priestley did in his life. The church didn't work, he got a new church. That church didn't work, he got a new church. This job didn't work, that didn't, he just kept moving on. When his experiments didn't work, he started over and found a new way to do it. So he always kept moving on. And in fact, he had to move on. Here he is, finding the eraser. Priestley called it rubber. In honor of this event, on April 15th, it is International Rubber Day. So, day for erasers. So if you're an eraser head, that is your day. Well, here's his friend with Benjamin Franklin. So I mentioned that he always said, okay, that didn't work, let's start over. Well, he kept asking questions and coming up with answers. His answers were not always appreciated. He thought the Americans were bang on going for this revolution. He lived in England. His view was not very popular. He was not very popular. They burned his laboratory to the ground. So he decided he's going to leave this country, England, and go to another one. And Benjamin Franklin said, hey, come on down to the United States of America. We're new. And so in 1794, at a fairly advanced age, he and his kids came over to the United States of America. And he settled in Northumberland, Pennsylvania. And he lived there for another 10 years and did more experiments and started a Unitarian church and also started what became the American Chemical Society. So if you want to see or remember Joseph Priestley, you can go to his house and his laboratory in Northumberland, Pennsylvania. You can find a statue of him in Leeds, England, which is one of the places he lived and worked. You can see his place where he lived in England, London, before they burned his laboratory to the ground. And if you're really good at chemistry, you might even get the Joseph Priestley Medal for Distinguished Service in Chemistry. and that is awarded by the American Chemical Society. And believe it or not, there is actually a room in this building named for Joseph Priestley. I encourage you to find it. But perhaps one of the best ways to remember Joseph Priestley is with a pencil and the eraser at the end, and knowing that you can always start over and scratch it out. So if any of you would like to come and take a pencil with its eraser attached in honor of Joseph Priestley, feel free to do so now and come on up. Oh, come on, John. They're even sharpened. Thank you. So this is the time when we normally sing the children off to RE. Is anybody leaving to go to another group, or are you all staying with us today? Okay, we are going to sing the children's recessional. It's been a while since we've had reason to sing this, but it is hymn number 413, Go Now in Peace. So sing along, or hum. Sorry, we're humming. Thank you. And now we're going to take a few moments for silence, a time of reflection, meditation, and prayer. The singing bowl will lead us into the silence, and after a few moments, Forrest will start to play Spirit of Life, which is hymn number 123. And Natalie will now share a responsive reading with us. 544, so you can, no, do I have the number wrong? 650. Sorry, 650.
That was 650. It's called Cherish Your Doubts. Cherish your doubts, for doubt is the attendant of truth. Doubt is the key to the door of knowledge. It is the servant of discovery. A belief which may not be questioned binds us to error, for there is incompleteness and imperfection in every belief. Let no one fear the truth, that doubt may consume it, for doubt is the testing of belief. For truth, if it is truth, arises from each testing stronger, more secure. But those who fear not doubt and know its use are founded on rock. Therefore, let us not fear doubt, but let us rejoice in its help. I think I'm supposed to introduce the next speaker. Yep. All right. I'd like to introduce Dr. Charles Barman, my other half, and he has dedicated his whole life to improving science education and teaching young people the nature of science, not just the facts in a book, and working with teachers all over the world. He's worked in Thailand, he's worked in Macedonia, to bring science, to real science, to young people for their understanding. So I give you Charles Barman.
Thank you, Natalie. Just going to set this here. I have a little introduction that I'd like to share before I begin the actual presentation. I started my professional career in education as a high school biology teacher. After 6 years of teaching high school biology, I moved to a university position, teaching introductory biology and preparing secondary science and math teachers, and teaching graduate courses in science education. All through this time, a major issue that I faced and many of my colleagues encountered was the battle between science and creationists. Creationists advocate giving equal instruction time to evolution, and creationism, or eliminate evolution altogether from the science curriculum. The courts have repeatedly sided with the scientists, saying that the creationist model, as they say, is not a scientific theory and is not based on empirical evidence. However, this issue continues to raise its ugly head in many of our states. Today, I'm not here to debate the issue of evolution versus creationism. Instead, I'm going to try to shed some light on why this is an issue in our society and why there exists a resistance to science information and scientists. I believe much of this controversy stems from a large portion of our society's lack of understanding of the nature of science and the scientific enterprise. So that's why I titled it The Nature of Science versus the U.S. And I'd like to begin with a reading, very short quote from David Allison, who's the Dean of Public Health at the Indiana University. When we want to know something, most of us ask questions. Scientists do the same thing. Even the word science comes from the Latin word scientia, which means knowing or to come to knowledge. And so far, nearly every important scientific discovery has begun with a good question. So, if that's the case, why do so many Americans resist science? This was a poll in 2021 where they were canvassing Republicans and Democrats. And it shows a tremendous difference between the Republicans and Democrats, but still a good portion of our society that do not trust scientists or what scientists report. Some of the reasons may be that science in the 21st century is removed from daily life. Scientists find it necessary to speak with precision by using technical terms and scientific jargon. Jargon removes science almost completely from the realm of the lay public. There is also an outspoken faction of Americans who distrust experts, who have widened the gap between Americans' trust in science and scientists. And I think this is extremely evident right now during the pandemic and some of the issues that we have in our society. So what I'd like to do is use evolution as an example of the science resistance to try to point out some of the things, and then also look at what are some of the things that we can do to possibly try to rectify this. I've got a couple of examples here. In 2005, there was a poll where 42% of respondents did not believe in evolution. Many from the poll also believe in unproven medical treatments, out-of-body experiences, existence of ghosts, legitimacy of astrology, ESP, and divination. And even though that evolution is the unifying theory of modern biology, I mean, it is still very misunderstood by a lot of people. In 2006, a cross-national study of U.S. and 33 countries was conducted. This was conducted by the AAAS, the American Association for the Advancement of Science. And what it showed, I mean, was really depressing, is the fact that 1 in 3 Americans firmly reject the concept of evolution, and we ranked 33rd out of 34, right above Turkey. Alas, progress has been made. A study conducted by the National Center for Science Education in 2022 shows some progress has been made. However, about 50% either reject or aren't sure that evolution explains our existence and that of other creatures on this earth. Even in 1980, Ronald Reagan stated, "Evolution is just a theory." His statement demonstrated a major misunderstanding of science and the scientific enterprise. And I also believe this statement represents the misunderstandings of many other people in our society. How many of you have heard somebody say, "I have a theory. I have a theory about this," or something of that type? Everyday usage of theory often refers to a hunch or speculation. When people say, "I have a theory about this," they are often drawing a conclusion based on intuition or hearsay. Formal scientific theory is quite different, and the everyday usage that we use. A scientific theory is a comprehensive explanation of some aspect of nature that is supported by a vast body of evidence. Scientific theories have to be testable. In other words, science is a way of knowing that differs from other ways of knowing due to its dependence on empirical evidence and the testable conclusions. Science knowledge is certified knowledge. So to understand evolution and other scientific theories, you need to understand the quantity and evidence that has been collected through the years to form these models. Scientific theories are not static. They are constantly being tested and revised based on new information. And I'd like to share with you another quote from David Allen from Indiana University. "Scientists use proven methods of rigorous study to answer their questions. Once they suspect they've validated their hypotheses, others try to replicate them and thus verify the findings. Only after an answer has been established firmly can scientists reliably build upon it by asking new and related questions." In other words, the thinking skills and process skills used by scientists, they're displayed in this particular table. And this list was comprised by the American Association for Advancement of Science, AAAS, in the 1960s. One of the things that I wanted to just point out is when you take a look at the basic and integrated skills of the scientists, basic skills are things that are kind of done independently integrated skills are skills in which you are combining and using more than one skill together. And a little bit later here, we're going to do something with observation and inference, because observation is one of the most basic skills used by scientists. In using the thinking and process skills, scientists engage in what is referred to as a scientific enterprise. This chart describes those actions, and you got people asking questions, and hypotheses are established, and eventually investigations are put together in many different ways: experiment, field studies, computer, library research. All of these lead to additional information about the natural world. Now, on one hand, the methods and conclusions are communicated to other scientists for their critique and analysis. This adds to the body of knowledge and leads to the formulation to a new and more refined questions. On the other hand, the information is communicated to the general public by the media, often received as a final word, and the public doesn't realize that this is just a step toward deeper understanding. And this tension causes somewhat of a misunderstanding, I'm sure, many times by people. And the impact of this is in economic implications, political implications, and sociological implications. And again, this is pretty much what is happening right now when you think of the information that the scientists are trying to give us related to the pandemic and related to vaccines. The way the media is presenting it, and the scientists are looking at it as every time they get new information, just keeps adding to the body of knowledge in which that they are gaining and getting a deeper understanding of COVID, et cetera. Over here, people get one piece of information and tend to take that as the final word and keep wondering why the CDC is changing its viewpoints in terms of what we should be doing for the general public or what we should be doing in schools. But it just kind of shows the kind of misunderstanding that the public does have regarding science. And the National Center for Science Education did a study just recently, and was reported in the winter of 2022. And what it indicates is that high school students have a mixed understanding of the key aspects of science. And I would indicate that this is the pretty general public. It would be pretty much the case of the general public. And also believe that this is characteristic. If you take a look at the things that they have found, is that, oops, I'm sorry. Pointer, oh. There, okay. The observation and inference and tentative science, the students seem to do pretty well with that. Here they have kind of a transitional view of the process of scientific investigation and the social and cultural influence of science. And when it comes to the imagination, creativity, and scientific theories, they have very naive views. And again, I mean, that's why I see why we have such a problem with the theory of evolution and other information that has been transmitted by scientists that people reject. So what can we do to help individuals? This is something that I had been working on for years. Natalie was also at the university when we were doing our investigations on how we could help students try to gain better understandings. And there are many different tools in which you can use. The AAAS and some other organizations have developed some really good examples. Natalie and I worked on some. And what I brought today was just to make it kind of an interesting idea of what we could do and put you in the driver's seat of students. I brought two examples. Actually, one is what we're going to be doing, differentiating between observation and inference. The other one deals with what is the image of a scientist, and that's something else that we did with students, and I'll share with you just a little bit of the information that we got. But the first example is going to kind of give us an idea of what is done in investigations by scientists. The second example is what the kind of image that a person would have of what a scientist is or who a scientist is. So, what I'm going to ask you to do, and you've got people next to you that you can kind of talk to one another for a short time. There's going to be 3 slides that you're going to see. I got to take my glasses off so I can see them. And the sequence will make one of a whole. And what I'd like you to do is to come up with 2 observations from each slide. And from those, at least 2, and then from those observations, come up with an inference. For example, observation, you get information from one or more of your senses. Inferring is explaining the observation. Example, the man's face is red. Inference, he was running or he was sunburned. Okay? So let's take a look at the first slide. Is that visible to everyone? Maybe not, huh? On this side, if I get out of the way.
To be a bar, correct.
Okay. A bar.
Correct.
Graph. Oh, okay. Good.
There's a similar process going on with each of the green dots.
Okay.
It looks like something's moving from the left to the right.
Okay.
Yeah, track.
Somebody else tracks? You said tracks? Okay. All right. Oh, what might you infer from that? Yeah.
The brown was soft.
Okay. Another inference, possibly?
It's further apart on the right, so I'd say it's going faster
Okay.
or accelerating.
So, okay. Any others? Yeah.
They're bullet holes.
They're bullet holes.
And someone shot with a gun all the way up and sprayed it through.
Yeah, okay, all right. Let's take a look at the second slide. What's an observation you can make now?
They're buoyant.
They're what?
They're buoyant. They're moving upwards. They're buoyant.
Okay. Any others?
Well, initially it looked like tracks, like maybe one thing was moving, but now there's a whole bunch, so it doesn't look like it's one thing anymore.
Okay.
Whether your congregating is a lot of people congregate sports and all.
All right.
They look like spores of moles.
Scores of mold. Okay. Yes.
They look like, well, maybe I'm moving on to inference. It looks like they're dancing prints.
Yeah.
That's why they're
Okay,
closer.
so what sense did you use to determine that they were dancing?
Sight.
Did you actually see them dance?
No, but I see the print or the marks that were left behind.
Yeah, so I would agree that you are moving on to an inference there. That's fine. Okay, so what are some other inferences?
You've been showing us from left to right, so I think we think it's moving in a direction,
Okay.
but you could be unveiling something that is not exposed on the other side yet. So it could be like I don't know, like a seed head that has, some seeds coming off it from the other direction, so.
Okay. All right. Anybody else?
They're approximately double the number.
Okay, good.
Looks like the footprint of a waterfowl bird.
Ah, okay. Forrest, you said it looks like there's, they double the number. Good observation. What would you infer from that?
That they are replicated. I mean, if the first position 1 is static, and we're seeing the entire picture of position 1, otherwise, there's more of them to the left of position 1 that are coming to them, and they become more random.
All right. Anybody else? Yeah.
Or it's one thing and it's just going faster.
Good. Let's take a look at the last slide. Now what do you observe, first of all?
New tracks. The red guy's lost.
Here, Natalie?
There are different tracks.
Okay, you're sure they're tracks?
Well,
Waylaid, carried on.
Are you sure they're tracks?
well, they're marks.
Okay, different marks?
I see a word there, it says footprint.
Very good. That's a good observation. Okay, so if they're footprints, okay, now, Janine, I'd like you to infer what you think happened.
The red guy's lost.
They're different shapes. They're
Two
different
different,
shapes now.
two different creatures came together, got into some kind of a, either argument or dance, and either the red one took flight and disappeared, or it got,
Yeah, I got
Very
it,
good. Yeah.
because it was on the ground.
Okay.
And now it's disappeared. We see no tracks. Well, it could be.
Okay, all right. Anybody else? Any other?
There's no way to know what the time frame is on that. All you see is the traffic, and the other could be a bird, assuming it's foot feet. That could be starting there and going that way. This other one could be coming up and looking for it and then wandering off. Who knows? I mean, you just don't have enough to.
Yeah.
We don't really know the progression of time also. I mean, we're sort of, because it was displayed from left to right, we assume that time is increasing as we go from left to right. But maybe it's the other way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, according, or along the same line of thinking with your time, maybe the one red footprints were put there a year ago, and the other footprints were put there yesterday. Who knows? And there's just something interesting at that spot that they both are interested in.
Yes. Yeah. Did you know? All right. Yeah, thank you. Okay, thanks. Yes, Forrest.
The only with the third slide did the red footprints show up, so I'm really not sure what's up with that.
Charlie, bring the mic over to
No, no.
him so he can speak. That's what we can't hear. Everybody.
I can use my outside voice. What I was saying is that the red did not show up until the third slide, so I really don't know the relationship
Yeah. Okay. All right.
of the two.
Yeah. Anybody else? Now that I have a mic here. Anybody else?
Two animals got together and one of them got the other one.
Okay. All right, so as you can see, there is no definitive answer, and you wouldn't present it that way, but it does get students to basically look at things and try to come up with some valid conclusions, but first base it on good observations. And that's kind of the idea. I mean, this is just one little exercise. There are many others that you can do, that you can work with students. Natalie and I, when we were at Indiana University, we taught a course called Introduction to Scientific Inquiry. And the whole course was based on just basically working on those process skills, the kinds of thinking that scientists do. And it was very light on content. We didn't worry about that as much. We were more interested in getting the students to act like scientists, to do some things that were really we call scientific thinking. Now, the other example that I have here is a example of a study that I conducted back in 1997. It was a national study. It was conducted by I would put it this way, it was the organization that helped me do it was the National Science Teachers Association, and the information was presented in Science and Children in 1997. And in the 70s and 80s, the big push in science textbooks, I was involved in doing some science textbook writing at the time, and the big push was that we had to make sure that when we had any illustrations in the book that represented scientists or people doing things in science, that we represented males, females equally, as well as people of color, because there was a tremendous difference back, say, in the 60s and 50s in textbooks. So it was very carefully done, et cetera. And so during that period of time, students were using these books. And so in the early 90s, I proposed to the National Science Teachers Association, I said, you know, because this push has been going on, I'd like to conduct a study to see if there may be any change in the way students view scientists. So they said, great, let's do it. So I used a protocol that had been done earlier by a person in Australia by the name of Chambers, and I adapted a little bit and did some testing to make sure it would work. So what we did was we asked students in personal interviews to draw a picture of a scientist, and we gave them paper, and we gave them pencil and colors so that they could color if they wanted. And excuse me, and then we also asked them to draw a picture of themselves doing science, because I thought it would really be a good insight for teachers to see what their students actually saw themselves doing in the science classroom, as well as what they saw who a scientist was. And the idea was, as you conducted the interview individually with the student, then you asked them some questions about the picture that they drew. And later, we had an analysis tool that we would look at to see if there were certain stereotypes that were characteristic, et cetera, of the pictures that they drew. And the first one you can see, this is a perfect example of the stereotype that students had. Obviously, the textbooks hadn't done a whole lot of good. You've got kind of the Frankenstein character with the white coat, white male, no image of female. And that was the case when we had over 1,500 interviews that were conducted. And, oh, I'm sorry, yeah. Where did I put the, okay. We had over 1,500 interviews that we conducted, and it came out that the white male was still very predominant. Frankenstein creature with all the lab equipment and that, rather than looking at science as in a much more, different way in that it's not only in the lab, it's also conducted outside in the field and other things. Here's a second picture, pretty much the same. And this was a young lady who did that. So, I mean, we had an even number of males and females who participated in the study, and it showed that they still had the same pretty much characteristic views of what a scientist was. And it was kind of disheartening to see that. So then the second thing that we did was ask them to draw a picture of themselves studying science. This was the one that really put a nail in my heart when I got this one. You would hope that science in a classroom was going to do more than that. I failed to put one up here because I thought, no, I don't want to, but I had one where a student had his head down on a desk and he was sleeping and he had zzz going like that. That was the way he was studying science. This is the other one I picked out. We had several pictures. But this one, again, I mean, this is much better. You got this young lady seeing herself as a scientist, but again, she's in a lab rather than thinking of more of a holistic view of what scientists do. And so those were the examples that I brought. Now so I guess in conclusion, what I'd like to say about this whole business of how we could possibly try to get people to have a better understanding of science and be able to accept some of the things that our scientists are doing, and rather than the resistance that we have in our society, is we need to engage students in asking good questions. That's the first thing. And in science class, that'd be a critical feature. From that, having them form good hypotheses and testing them. Collecting data and drawing valid conclusions from the data. Learning and understanding the importance of the scientific theory and the rigor that goes into forming theories. I mean, it's not just a whim, which a lot of people think about, including President Reagan. And then finally, what I feel would be really important to do is to include more history of science. Look at famous scientists, what they did, their lives and work, and we have so many good examples of female scientists now that could be included in this, as well as people of color. So bringing that together, and part of it is in the science curriculum, I think would be a key feature and a good way in which we could start at getting students and people in our society to understand what is science, what is the nature of science, as well as a scientific enterprise. Any questions? Okay. If not, do I turn it back to Janine? Okay.
Thank you for that. Very interesting, and I'm sure if we would like to discuss this topic, we're going to gather outside so we can unmask in the space between the two buildings after the service. So that's a good place to talk about it and talk about perhaps your own experiences with science and what a scientist looks like. I know my first picture of a scientist was Mr. Spock. So he's white and male, but he's a Vulcan, so he's it's a whole different species. It is now time for the offertory. Our church is supported by the generous contributions of those who attend and those who share with us via the magic of the internet, which was developed by scientists. Gotta say that. And so Forrest will be playing some music for us while we do that. You can give, there's going to be a QR code, and you can do that way. You can leave money in the little baskets on your way out, too. Okay. And thank you to everyone who's generously donated. And we like to say it takes time, treasure, and talent to make these Sunday services happen and also keep this church moving. And so I'd also like to we've thanked Forrest, and thank you to Charlie and Natalie, of course, for doing our readings and our service message this morning. Also like to thank some of the people that we don't see, except briefly. We want to say thank you to Matt, our man behind the curtain. Yay, Matt. And of course, our greeters who said hi to you this morning, and everybody who worked so hard to put all of this together, so thank you. If you do have questions about Unitarian Universalism or about this congregation, please speak with a member of our membership team or our board president, and you can email her at president@uubgky.org. And community news is available on our Facebook page and on the bulletin board and through our weekly email update that gets sent out. And you can subscribe to that by filling out one of the little yellow cards. As far as news goes, community news, I'm not sure what the third Sunday donation is going to be next week. Does anybody know? Okay. Often we have a special donation on the third Sunday, so please check your newsletter for that. And one more thing, the memorial tiles, today is the last day to get the order, and I'm going to be sending it off for the memorial tiles to go in our meditation garden. So if you wanted to get one, please do so today, and you can talk to me about that after the service. Okay. Oh, and next week we're going to be hearing from Laura McGee about this one wild and precious life. So I'm looking forward to seeing her. We would like to close with a hymn, and Forrest is, that's the talking part. A Fire Mist and a Planet, verses 1 and 3. Forrest, are you going to sing it for us as you play, or are you just going to hum? Okay, read along and imagine, I guess.
I'll play it through twice, so imagine the words in your head.
Okay. 343, I believe. Thank you. We have our final reading from Natalie.
Go your ways, knowing not the answers to all things, yet seeking always the answers to one more thing than you already know.
We now bid farewell to those who have joined us online, whether live streaming today or in some time in the future, because this is being recorded and is going to be available on YouTube. So if you enjoyed today's service and you wanted to share it with a friend, you can always look it up and share it that way, or listen to it again. We hope you found this service meaningful and that you join us again sometime. Be well and go in peace.